Yesterday morning at 7 a.m., I woke up to the sound of air raid sirens and the announcement on loudspeakers that bombing might commence soon, and to find shelter and to help the elderly and the young find shelter as well. So we headed to the train station. We waited in line an hour for the train, and there was no train. Next train was March 1st. Then we headed to the bus station. Next bus was February 28th. And then we just sort of set out on foot west because we considered that to be our only option. And then our first sign of trouble was that we started hitting gas stations with no gas and tons of cars parked outside because people had been fleeing from the east all day long. But all these cars were along the road, and the occupants of these cars had left and were carrying all their possessions with them at the time. And this included women and children, elderly people. They were carrying tons of luggage. And it was really tragic because you could see these elderly people moving very slowly, these children moving very slowly. And everybody had the goal of getting to safety, getting to NATO as quickly as possible. And then we started encountering soldiers, Ukrainian army soldiers, and we got even closer to the border. And they immediately started saying on loudspeakers that President Zelensky of Ukraine, had just declared that all men aged 18 to 60 had to be conscripted by Ukraine now and sent east. And this was, to most of the men around us, a terrifying announcement because most of the men were taking care of families, because the military was ordering them at gunpoint to be conscripted into the army now. And so a lot of them argued, a lot of them said, look, I have kids, please don't make me do this. The military didn't care. The military pretty violently and crassly shoved these men out of their wives' arms. And so there were a lot of heartfelt, emotional goodbyes. There were a lot of kids who cried a lot. And it was like a desperation on the part of the Ukrainian citizens, because not only did they want to get through that gate because they wanted to get through that gate because they wanted to get out of Ukraine, but because we were out in the open all the time. There was no sense of electricity, internet, toiletries, toilets, food, or water for anybody. The world needs to be aware of the humanitarian crisis that's happening in Ukraine right now. As we speak, there are hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians at the border suffering exactly what I just described to you. And I know that because I was doing it last night. They're out in the cold. They have no food, no water, no toilet. And they're out there in the cold for 20, 30 hours, sometimes maybe even more if the border has gotten more crowded. It's a humanitarian crisis. It's a disaster.